everyone, welcome back to Creatively Crafted Life. This is Melanie, and I am bringing you a scrapbook process video, and in particular what I want to talk about today is the idea of scraplifting. Now, scraplifting is pretty common, I think, in the scrapbooking world, and basically it involves copying someone else's work to some extent, either entirely or you take parts and pieces from it and use it to make your own page. And I've been scrapbooking, over 25 years, and I still do this every now and then where I find inspiration from somebody else's work or something that I really like, and I incorporate it into a page of my own. So in this case, I found this page on Pinterest, and I included a picture of that at the start of the video, along with the blogging address of the person who created this. I tried to access the page directly, but I couldn't. I guess it was restricted. So all I have is that information, but I do think it's important to let you know who the person was that originally did the scrapbook page. Now, what inspired me initially was the look of the windows of an airplane and what you see when you're looking out. And I travel fairly often, and I have a lot of photos that I take while in the airplane. I don't know why. I just love the view from above. I still am a little bit in awe every time that I do have that opportunity to look outside the window. So what I do want to talk about is how you can take someone else's idea and make it your own. The very first thing that I want you to think about is changing proportions. So you'll see here that my three photos are slightly different, a slightly different scale than the photos in the original inspiration piece. But for the most part, they are the concept's still the same, right? I have a lighter background, and I've got these three photos that represent windows from an airplane. Now, the other thing I've done is I've changed how I've selected my photos. So I have three separate photos here, whereas the original has just one single photo. So representing, of course, if you were to look out three windows, you'd see the same view. Mine is more, here's three different views on a particular trip. Okay, so changing proportions is one way to make it your own. The other thing that you'll have noticed is that I did my journaling on some white cardstock, and I cut it into word strips just like it was in the original inspiration piece. But when you saw me a little bit earlier lay it out, I laid them more underneath the photos than in the top right hand corner, and that's because my journaling is quite a bit larger. So don't be afraid to move elements around. So in this case, I'm moving the journaling from the top right hand down underneath the three photos. Also, don't be afraid to add other elements. So in the original, there was nothing underneath the photos. They were just right directly on the back cardstock, and I'm not sure if there was stitching involved or if it was just outlined, but I added a piece of vellum, and the idea behind that is just to kind of make them ground them a little more together so that they look like a cohesive unit because the pictures are different. So that was my thought process there. Because I've moved the position of my journaling, it has also changed perhaps where I want to put my embellishment clusters. Now, at the start of this page, I had gone through a lot of my travel ephemera and picked out a number of items and of things that I thought would work with this page. And in the original inspiration, she used clouds and airplanes, and then she had some washi tape layered pieces in the bottom corner, and of course she had a title that she added on towards the bottom left hand side. So my switch of moving the journaling is going to impact some of those decisions, right? Because now a title is going to be a little bit harder to fit in on the left hand side, and so I've got to consider that. So after playing around with some of the embellishments, I decided I didn't really like most of them. I did like the airplane, and I did like that round enamel circle piece. Actually, it's probably more acrylic. And I love the idea of using clouds from the original inspiration. So I pulled out some cloud dies and I'm just punching out a number of them to scatter around the page. And I'm trying to maximize my sheet of scrap cardstock there. So I'm liking the way that that's looking, and I'm thinking the acrylic piece, the round acrylic piece, is going to become my title. So I'm going to swap out the letters that she used for this other piece. And again, that's just part of making it my own. I also felt I needed what's the right word? I felt I needed a couple more airplanes. And I decided that black was a good option to go with. The original ephemera piece that I had picked out was a dark colored airplane, and so I thought black would help balance that off. So now I've got 3 airplanes, which kind of give you that visual triangle, and I'm really happy with that. Now, here's another element. To make it my own, I decided that I wanted to border the entire 12 by 12 piece of paper with a dark black cardstock or pattern cardstock. So that's what you see me doing here. So I'm just taking off, it looks like about 1/2 inch off 2 ends of the 12 by 12 paper so that I have this nice dark border all the way around it. And of course, I'm on this kick of outlining things, and I think it just helps make the patterns go a little bit together. So that's what you see me doing here. So we're going to add the photos back, add the journaling one more time. Now at the bottom of the journaling, you'll see I have this black label, and that is because this is from 2017, and during that year I was trying to participate in Capture Your 365, the idea of taking a photo every day based on different prompts. And to be cohesive throughout the entire album, I'm using a Dymo label to document what the prompt was for that day. Okay, so that's what I'm going to be including at the bottom. And yeah, at this point, I'm liking the way it looks. I think I've got a pretty good balance going across it. I do want to outline this particular airplane though, because, or not outline, it's got a diagonal pattern on it, and I want to make it look a little bit darker. Just to match the other 2 black airplanes that I have. So all you see me doing here is just going in and filling the lighter stripes on the plane so that it will end up looking, or will have a greater weight on the page. At least that's my thought. So you can see now it looks quite a bit darker, which looks good, or I think it looks good. So as I mentioned earlier, she had used either washi tape or scraps of paper at the bottom left, and so I thought, well, maybe I could try and incorporate some of that in here. But again, it didn't seem to quite work with the changes that I have made, so I'm opting to leave that out. So at this point now, it's just a matter of adhering everything down. Now the vellum can be a little bit tricky, so I only added adhesive behind the photos just to keep it simple. So the edges of that do curl up a little bit, but once it's in a page protector, I'm really not that concerned about it. I'm just using some liquid glue. This is Tombow Mono Aqua, I believe, to adhere those paper strips down. All of the items that I've used on today's page are all stuff from my stash. Really old. I think some of the pages are from Studio Calico, ephemera. I think the plane might be from a Kaiser Craft, but don't quote me on that. And then of course I just used some scraps for the clouds and the journaling. So to adhere the round acrylic piece, I'm using a little bit of score tape, and for the clouds I'm popping some up using foam tape, and others I'm gluing directly down onto the backing just to give it some interest. And the planes, they're pretty tiny, so I'm just going to glue those down. I did consider maybe popping up this larger one, and I just figured it was too much work. So I think we've got enough dimension going on with the clouds, not to mention that vellum piece adds a little bit of dimension as well, where the edges curl up a little bit. As always, when I use liquid glue, I like to place a stamp block or something heavy on some of the items just to make sure that it has some good contact with the papers. You know, I don't know if it makes a difference or not. I think it does, which is why I do it, but maybe it's an unnecessary step. And now it's just a matter of adding the date and checking to see if there's anything else I want to add, and I think this is pretty much it. So just to wrap this up about scrap lifting and how to make it your own, don't be afraid to change the proportions, move elements around, remove elements, so things that just aren't going to work for you. Don't forget that you have the opportunity to add elements, and also don't be afraid to substitute. It doesn't need to be literal. I hope you'll give scrap lifting a try the next time you find something that inspires you. And until next time, happy crafting.